Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be exploring Philippians Chapters 1 and 2.
Excellent.
This section is often called the Epistle of Joy, which is interesting because Paul wrote it from prison.
Yeah, a very challenging time.
Yeah. So we're going to discover how joy and humility can thrive even in the toughest circumstances.
Absolutely. These chapters are packed with wisdom about living a life that reflects Christ no matter the obstacles.
So imagine you're Paul in prison, and yet the first thing he does is express gratitude to the Philippians.
Yeah.
He says, "I thank my God in all my remembrance of you, always in every prayer of mine, for you all making my prayer with joy." So what do you think brought him so much joy in that situation?
It's amazing, isn't it? Well, one thing that stands out to me is that joy isn't dependent on circumstances. It's not about what's happening around us,
Right.
but about what's happening inside us. Paul's joy came from his connection to the Philippians and their shared faith, what we call the gospel.
So it's about holding on to that bigger picture even when things are tough.
Precisely. And this leads to that incredible line from Paul. For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain.
Yeah, wow.
Powerful stuff.
What do you think he means by that?
Well, for Paul, his whole existence was about reflecting Christ's love. Every decision, every interaction was an opportunity to live out his faith.
Yeah.
And, that kind of perspective can completely change how we approach each day.
It's like you're seeing the world through a new lens. And Paul urges the Philippians to stand firm in one spirit, with one mind striving side by side for the faith of the gospel. What a call to action.
It is, and it reminds us that we're stronger together, especially when facing opposition.
Yeah.
The Philippians were often persecuted,
Right.
but their shared faith in the gospel gave them strength.
So it's not just about individual faith, but coming together and facing challenges as a united front.
Exactly. And this idea of unity becomes even more powerful when we consider he was writing this from prison, a place of isolation.
Right.
Yet he emphasized connection.
Now, in chapter 2, Paul introduces the Christ hymn, a profound description of Jesus' humility.
Yeah.
He says, "Emptied himself, taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross." It's powerful.
It really is. It challenges us to rethink our typical notions of power and leadership.
Because we see the ultimate leader choosing humility and service over dominance and control.
Exactly. Paul is presenting a radical concept. True strength comes from serving others.
And this idea of humility wasn't just theoretical for Paul. He gives practical advice. He urges, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves.
It's about taking this idea of humility and putting it into action in our daily lives.
It's about recognizing that other people have just as much value and dignity as we do, and treating them accordingly.
Which can be a real challenge, in a world that so often encourages us to put ourselves first.
So we've seen Paul find joy in a difficult situation, redefine what it means to truly live, and challenge us to stand united and embrace humility.
A lot to unpack.
Where does this journey take us next?
Welcome back to our deep dive into Philippians Chapters 1 and 2.
Yeah, it's amazing how these words written by Paul from prison are still so relevant today.
It really is. And as we continue our exploration, we're going to delve deeper into this idea of living as lights in a crooked and twisted generation.
I love that image. Makes you think about those moments when you witness acts of kindness, compassion, selflessness.
Yeah.
It's like a spark of light breaking through the darkness. But how do we actually live that out? How do we, translate this concept into concrete actions? What does it look like in our everyday lives?
Well, Paul thankfully doesn't just leave us hanging with these ideas. He offers some practical insights. For example, he reminds the Philippians and us to stand firm in one spirit, with one mind striving side by side for the faith of the gospel.
So it's not just about individual acts of goodness. It's about working together to make a difference.
Exactly. Paul understood that we're stronger together. Our collective efforts can have a greater impact than anything we could achieve alone.
That's interesting because you wouldn't necessarily think of unity as a key theme in a letter written from prison, a place of isolation. What do you think Paul was getting at there?
That's a great observation. I think it highlights the importance of connection, even amidst challenging circumstances. For the Philippians, this unity was rooted in their shared faith. They were a minority group, often facing opposition.
Right.
But their shared belief in the gospel bound them together to give them strength and resilience.
So their shared faith created this sense of belonging and purpose, which allowed them to stand firm even when things got tough.
Right.
And that idea of standing firm has implications for us today, even if we're not facing, literal persecution.
Oh, absolutely.
We all face challenges in life,
Yeah.
moments where we need to stand up for what we believe in.
Absolutely. Could be standing up to peer pressure, speaking out against injustice, or simply staying true to our values when it's difficult.
And that brings us back to humility, doesn't it? Because standing firm isn't about being rigid or self-righteous.
Right.
It's about having the courage to speak our truth, but also the humility to listen to others.
I completely agree. True humility allows us to engage in meaningful dialogue, to seek understanding rather than just trying to prove our point.
So we've got unity, we've got humility, and there's one more essential ingredient Paul emphasizes if we want to be those lights shining in the darkness: joy.
Yes, joy. And I think this is where people can get tripped up.
Yeah.
How can we possibly experience joy in the midst of suffering, uncertainty, or even just the everyday struggles of life?
Right. It almost seems counterintuitive. But Paul's joy wasn't dependent on his circumstances, was it?
No, it wasn't.
He found joy in his relationship with Christ, in the community of believers, and in the hope of something greater than himself.
Yes, exactly. It's about cultivating a deep sense of gratitude for the blessings in our lives, even the small ones. It's about recognizing that even in the darkest of times, there's always a glimmer of hope.
So instead of waiting for external circumstances to change before we allow ourselves to experience joy, it's about finding that joy within.
Precisely. And I think that's what makes joy such a powerful force. It's not just a fleeting emotion. It's a state of being that can sustain us through difficult times. And, when we radiate that joy, it affects those around us.
It's contagious.
Yes.
It inspires others to find hope and meaning, even when things are tough.
It's like a ripple effect spreading outward from our own hearts.
So we've got this beautiful trifecta: unity, humility, and joy. Working together, they can transform us into those lights that Paul speaks of, illuminating the path towards a more compassionate and just world. But I have to be honest, it can feel a little daunting. Where do we even begin?
That's a great question, and one I think a lot of people wrestle with. And I think the first step is recognizing that we don't have to do it all at once. It's a journey, a process of growth and transformation.
So it's about taking small steps, making intentional choices each day to embody these qualities.
Yeah.
What might that look like?
Well, for example, when it comes to unity, it could be as simple as reaching out to someone who's different from you, listening to their story, and trying to understand their perspective. Or maybe it's volunteering your time to support a cause you believe in.
I love that. And in terms of humility, maybe it's about admitting when you're wrong, asking for help when you need it, or simply choosing to listen more than you speak.
Exactly. And when it comes to joy, maybe it's about taking a moment each day to appreciate the good things in your life, no matter how small. Or maybe it's about offering a kind word or a helping hand to someone who's struggling.
So it's about taking those small everyday actions that can over time make a big difference. It's about choosing to be a light even when surrounded by darkness.
Exactly. And remembering that we're not alone on this journey.
That's so important. We have each other. We have our faith, and we have the love of God to guide us. As we wrap up our deep dive into Philippians Chapters 1 and 2, I'm struck by how powerful these words are. Written from a prison cell, they offer a blueprint for a life of joy, humility, and purpose.
It really is remarkable how Paul could write with such hope from those circumstances.
And one of the most powerful takeaways for me is this idea that joy isn't something we chase after,
Right.
but something we cultivate from within.
Yeah.
It's not about ignoring the hard stuff or pretending that everything is perfect.
Yeah.
It's about finding that deep well of peace and contentment that comes from knowing that we are loved and supported.
Absolutely. And that love and support comes from so many sources,
Yeah.
right? Our faith, our communities, our loved ones. It's about tapping into those sources of strength
Yeah.
and allowing them to sustain us through difficult times.
It's about recognizing that we're not alone in this.
Right.
That even when we feel isolated, there's support waiting to embrace us.
Exactly. And I think humility plays a vital role in this too.
Yeah.
When we approach life with humility, we open ourselves up to that love and support.
Right.
We let go of the need to be self-sufficient
Right.
and allow ourselves to be vulnerable.
That vulnerability can be incredibly powerful. It allows us to build deeper relationships with others.
It allows us to see the world with clearer eyes, appreciate the beauty and complexity of human experience.
And in that appreciation, we find gratitude, which fuels joy.
It's a beautiful cycle, isn't it?
It is.
Humility leads to connection. Connection leads to gratitude, and gratitude leads to joy.
And that joy is contagious.
It is.
It has the power to transform our own lives and the lives of those around us.
So as we go forth in this deep dive, let us carry with us the wisdom of Paul's words.
Yeah.
Let us cultivate joy in our hearts, embrace humility, and strive to be lights in a world that desperately needs hope.
Let us remember that we're not alone in this journey. We have each other, we have our faith, and we have the unwavering love of God.
And in that knowledge, may we find the strength and courage to live lives that truly reflect the love and grace of Christ.
It's been incredible exploring these chapters with you. We hope you've been inspired by the wisdom we've uncovered together. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep shining bright.
And may your journey be filled with joy, humility, and the unwavering love of God.